All right. So I'm Mike Perenich. I'm an attorney here at Perenich Law Injury Attorneys, and I'm with Laura Simon. I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Laura Simon with
Good
Perenich
job.
Attorneys. Nailed it.
We're going to talk about a verdict that was in our neighborhood, in our part of town, in Hillsborough, recently. I think it was 3 weeks ago, uh, where a attorney received a verdict or earned a verdict for his client of $70 million. dollars. And we're going to talk about some of the practical aspects of that and figure out what it really means because there's a lot of people online who have commentary on it, whether it's on Reddit or whether it's actual legal commentary. And I feel that I'm important enough to give you my perspective on it. Maybe not important enough, but maybe I know a little something, and I kind of want to put my own spin on it to maybe give some background. And Laura, of course, has a good background of seeing things from the other side as she used to work on the defense side, and she can add some good commentary from that perspective. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to pull up the article and then we can at least look at it for a second and, read it. Read it over for the first time so we know what we're talking about. Let me see here. Screenshots. Share. Okay, there it is.
Nice.
So yeah, it worked. Good. So this is a just the
It's a
headline from
hospital.
the Tampa. Yeah, it's that's a hospital there. What we identify as a hospital. So I think one of the first things to kind of note about this is obviously anyone can read the headline and see $70.8 million, dollars, but this is a regional hospital. It's Tampa General Hospital, but there's multiple Tampa Generals, and this is their regional hospital. So it kind of maybe is important in the grand scheme of things, but I think that a lot of people will be sent to Tampa General Hospital, downtown Tampa, for trauma one events, which is if something terrible happens to you, you'll go to downtown Tampa or St. Joe's Hospital, which is just north of that, if you need immediate medical attention. So uh, if you're in that event, tell them it's fine to go downtown. But this obviously was a big mistake that was made here at the Brandon Regional Hospital of Tampa General. So, Lord, are you how familiar with the facts are you?
I mean,
Not
enough
much.
to know. I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, it's a medical malpractice case, right? So this is kind of
Right.
separates it apart, which is one of the bigger deals when it comes down to this verdict. But like Florida just loves, in general speaking terms, like gotcha headlines, right? So this headline really will like scream out to everyone around regarding this $70.8 million verdict. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is money in the hand of the person that was injured, the single mom. And the facts are kind of really tragic when you kind of go down to it with her kids and the care that she received or did not receive. And now that she has this permanent life-altering injury that really affects her ability to care for her kids. It's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good point is we for better or worse, it's like people see verdicts like this and they go, "Oh, I know someone who had something like this happen, and maybe they should talk to a lawyer." And in some ways, I think that's good, and then in other ways, it's like, "Well, I have something I believe to be worse than this, and I'm not getting any money for it." And so I think people get upset by that, not getting anything from a case where they feel that their injuries are worse. And part of that's because we don't really know. We don't really get into how bad the injuries were. I want to look at this article because I did find in other parts of a different article how bad it was.
Yeah.
You
I mean, it's
see
tragic.
that she's mostly blind. She has paralysis on the left side. She's a single mom, two kids, has problems with her memory and concentration, and she has a stammer. So that's, you know, pretty significant. She'll never be able to work again. It's significant, but obviously the jury's going to hear about what that means for her going forward. and they felt it to be significant, right? And
Absolutely.
we're gonna look at that verdict form in a second, but anything else that we should talk about before moving on to that verdict form, as far as this article is concerned?
Just something you had mentioned about, when people, especially residents, and when it's something local, it really obviously hits harder to home, and you're like, wow, I know
Hmm.
someone, or it's if it's not yourself, you either know someone, and it's like that Kevin Bacon syndrome, right? Like you either know someone that knows someone, and it kind of just proliferates. But it is always a
Right.
good idea to at least have a conversation with someone because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so
True.
even if you
True.
thought there was something there, it's also kind of good for like peace of mind and closure to at least understand, okay, like sometimes things just happen, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes things happen and they were preventable, like this poor,
True.
this poor mom.
Yeah.
So
And that's a good point. And maybe we should talk about that quickly. Is basically the plaintiff went in for a really bad headache, and it was a nurse practitioner who should have ordered a CT. And had she ordered a CT, it basically would have caught this slowly forming clot she had, which actually kind of manifests itself in a really bad way. I want to say it's 2 days afterward.
I think so.
And, yeah, and the plaintiff put on a radiologist as an expert who said, yeah, had they run a CT, they would have caught it and none of this bad stuff would have happened. So I'm sure the defense put on multiple experts to say the exact opposite. And that's not,
Yeah.
something uncommon. It's not like any of these cases are slam dunks. Like you see $70 million and you're like, wow, they must have had a really good case. There's never, I've never seen a medical malpractice case that you just thought, oh, well, there's no defense at all. And I've seen some terrible stuff. So,
So
um, and by all means, this is a good verdict for what happened to her. But, there was, I guarantee you that there was a very strong counter argument to all these things that are being alleged here.
I'd agree with that too.
So, yeah, so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. But let me move on to the verdict so we can take a look at it and talk about it a little bit because I think most people have never seen a verdict form. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think it helps to kind of visualize what it is we're talking about. Because when we get to the end of a trial, this is all we talk about, is all right, this is what the jury is going to fill out. And so here we have quick, simple question is, did the person mess up, right? To put it in layman's terms, was the nurse practitioner negligent? Yes. And was the nurse practitioner an agent of Tampa General Hospital? And the reason that's important, and not to go too far into this, is that a lot of the times people go to hospitals, you're actually being treated by someone who is not an employee of the hospital. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that this person is not under the direction of the hospital, that there's no one who works for the hospital who's telling these people what to do. I say all that because that's not actually true. These people actually they that's how it's supposed to be, right? They're supposed to be, independent contractors and they are controlled by the hospital. That's kind of like the undercurrent is, yeah, we don't tell these people what to do, but also we tell them exactly what to do. So,
Exactly.
uh, it's a legal way of trying to avoid liability. And here, if you are an apparent agent of a hospital, then the hospital is on the hook for the negligence of that agent, right? So if you go to your doctor's office, let's say you went to a orthopedic surgeon and you wanted a knee replacement, and you talked to that physician and you guys got it worked up, and the orthopedic surgeon said, all right, meet me at the hospital on this day and I'll do the surgery, right? There you don't have an apparent agent question because you selected the doctor. You know that doctor doesn't work for the hospital, right? So it's not an issue there. So that's the long and short of that. I could
That's
go
true.
into that a lot,
Well, just
lot
before you
more.
go down, yeah, just before.
Sure.
So those two things, like obviously there's this is the ending. So this is what happens at the end of your case if you go to a trial and
True.
you have a jury and there's a verdict. But the very beginning, what starts a case is the complaint that's filed by the
Hmm.
plaintiff's
Hmm.
attorney. And so in that complaint, you have to actually put in the facts to support whether or not, say for instance, Heather Anderson was an apparent agent of TGH. So it's all things like these are it's like bookends, right? So you have to actually plead it properly and then you have to actually litigate it properly in order to get to this phase. So obviously that was done here and I think it's a really good thing that they were able to have that tied up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe something a lot of people don't realize is that when we start a case, we're kind of guessing what we can prove. I mean, we have an idea, especially in medical malpractice, what we can prove, but we're guessing. That's kind of what a complaint is. I think I have enough facts to allege the following things, and then hopefully we're right. And at the end of the case, we have a verdict form, which tells us if we actually proved those things. And the jury has read a course of instructions which tell them how to determine whether or not we met our burden of proof. So
Which I don't
maybe
know if you
that's
know,
its
that's
own.
but that's like my favorite thing to do is jury
I know.
instruction.
It's funny you say that. Yeah. I was wondering what you were going to be doing this weekend, and I don't have to wonder anymore because you're
Same
going to be
here.
working on jury instructions. All of your cases right now, jury instructions are knocked out. And soon to be all my cases because you're just gonna
Yeah.
it's like Sudoku for you.
It does feel that
I
way.
knew that about you, actually. You're gonna get a lot of referrals from other attorneys going, I know you really like to do jury instructions. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with jury instructions,
There's
and they're
not.
very important. They're very important, and
They're actually one of the most important things
just for the
in order to get to
edification
this
of
part. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, just for the edification of my mother watching, listen, the jury instructions are important, and you gotta have them right. It is just a little tedious, and if your case is anything but a normal case, it is kind of a pain. So, I can tell everyone a long story about that next time, but
And if anybody's watching this in
so
law school, don't even worry about it. They don't teach you. So don't even worry about
yeah,
this. Like,
right?
they'll learn it.
Seriously. Seriously. So, yeah, this what we see here is really important, I think, for this because juries oftentimes are faced with these questions of how do I determine what pain and suffering is and what's an appropriate value? Here, I don't really think we have any insight into what the rationale was, at least from the plaintiff's perspective. They may have asked for like 300 million. And the jury could have gone, yeah, we're not giving you that, but we'll give you 70. Like, it's that's
Sure.
not quite splitting the baby, but we're like, yeah, 70 is probably enough. But I think what's significant is you have $1 million in past medicals, which is significant in telling you how
A lot of
serious
treatment.
this was and what kind of care. And I think this is since 2021.
Hmm.
So my guess is that the plaintiff was either insured or receiving some sort of Medicare or Medicaid because even $1 million for what she's been through is not that much
No,
for that period of time, my opinion. So,
100%.
but we see futures though, 17 million for future medical care, which is probably a life care planner that came up with this. Um, you want to tell us what a life care planner is, Laura? Because I don't
Sure.
know. I
Well,
hope.
there's
I
in
really hope you
certain
know.
in certain professions, so a life care planner can sit and they speak with your client or if you're injured and they can kind of go through exactly and they also work in conjunction with your doctors and they can say, okay, well, due to this injury, you're going to have X, Y, and Z physical limitations. And during the course of your time, for your life expectancy, there's only a certain amount of things that you may or may not be able to do. And you have certain, requirements that are going to have to be met either from a physical or a mental or a both kind of standpoint. So they kind of give this projection of the cost that you're going to need in order to kind of at least live a sort of normal life compared to what happened before the accident. And in by no way, shape, or form is it 100% accurate. There are some that are very conservative, there's some that are very on the higher end, but it's really important that you have that at least for an understanding, not only for if you're going to go to a trial, but for your own benefit. Like it's really important
Right.
for you to also understand, wow, like I didn't even realize that was something I was going to need, or I didn't really understand I'm going to have an in-home nurse that is going to help me. Maybe not
Right.
even know,
Right.
but 20 years, I'm going to have that because these things are going to happen and my condition is going to worsen. I
Right.
mean, it's
Yeah.
actually mind blowing. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really educational thing. I mean, for everyone. I mean,
And it
usually it's
adds up
reserved for the
quickly.
more catastrophic, yeah, kind of cases.
Hmm.
Because typically you would hope, in some, if it's a rear end accident, those also can be very catastrophic. But for the most
Mm.
part, you wouldn't necessarily need one if if you're having conservative treatment and your doctor's like, listen, you might need this every once in a while. A life care planner is not something that you're typically going to need in that kind of case.
Right. That's true. And these are folks typically who they have a certification to do this exact sort of thing. And typically they're people who have some sort of history of seeing others go through things. So they can account for what you're going to be going through later on in life. And that's
Exactly.
more likely than not what happened here. I can always look up and see who the experts were, but more likely than not, they had a life care planner. I don't even think we need to really guess
No,
whether they
100%.
did or
Yeah.
not. I don't think the jury just came up with this number on their own.
No.
So right there, we already have um, just in medical expenses, you have a million plus, or 18 million, which is significant. You have lost earnings of 287,000 and then 1.3 in future lost earnings. And that's, there could have been like a economist, vocational expert, or even the life care planner themselves to give you that future and past lost wages to say that this person can no longer work. Which, these are all hard numbers. It's important to iterate that, we're looking at really hard numbers here, and we're about at what, 2 million, almost. I mean, 20 million almost here with just
Right.
the what we call economic damages.
And
And I
what I
find that
think
to
is
be
like,
important.
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I'm just saying, I think that's important because the jury is hearing that these are the numbers that this person will experience as a matter of course for their loss in medical bills and lost wages, and it sets the stage for what the pain and suffering damages are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The only thing I was going to add is, I mean, these numbers, I think you touched on it. I mean, they're exact. I mean, we're talking, there's no round numbers until you get to these non-economic or the pain and suffering damages, which are very
Hmm.
round numbers. So this kind of tells you based on, the numbers 3 to 6, you're adding 88 cents, you're adding a penny. Like those numbers, and we weren't there obviously for the trial, but these are definitely seemingly coming from one sort of side. Like it definitely seems like the jury was very much paying attention in this case. It seems like they were
Hmm.
absolutely aware of what the evidence was and they really weighed it one way or the other because I don't think it's something that they took into their own hands when it came to putting those numbers on this. Now,
Right.
when you get down to the last two, those non-economics, it definitely seems to be something that they may have, like you said, they may have bridged the gap or they may have kind of come up with a different sort of compromise. We don't know what the ask was. I can tell you right now the defense was much lower than $70 million in
Yes.
the trial.
Yes.
But I thought that was really interesting when I looked at the verdict form.
Yeah. 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 It. I think that generally speaking, depends on the lawyer handling the case from the defense side. They might say, "Yeah, it's really unfortunate what happened, but you know, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter because we didn't deviate from the standard of care. Generally
Yep.
speaking, which is the way of saying that we're not at fault.
Yep.
And I imagine, and I don't know, and we can delve into this further if anyone's ever interested. Mom, if you're interested, I'll do the work. But if, but if you're faced with a situation, I think the easiest argument, or maybe the best argument, is the CT would not have caught this, and that the plaintiffs are asking us to do something that doesn't matter because if we were to follow the way that they want us to practice medicine, one, we'd be doing CTs on every single person that has a headache. And two, we would be doing CTs needlessly. Even if someone had this condition, there's nothing that we could have done to change it, right? That's kind of what you had to argue. I imagine that they had maybe more nuance to it because they knew all the facts, and I'm just kind of surmising based on what I've read.
Yeah.
But I mean, what do you think, Laura? What would
No,
you add to
I
that?
agree. I agree. And that kind of goes into like this other kind of argument, which, or topic, I guess we could say, like, then it turns into, well, what is the medical malpractice? What does that turn into? Is it now becoming preemptive medicine? Is it actually
Hmm.
for the care of every single individualized? I think there was an issue here in this case, if I'm not mistaken, it was COVID timeframe, so they were significantly understaffed, they
Hmm.
were significantly overwhelmed,
Right.
and that I think absolutely played in a factor for how this poor single mom had just absent of care, in my opinion.
Right. Right. Well, and not to get into this kind of sends us far afield, I know, but a lot of
Us going off
hospitals,
track?
it's like my middle name. It the issue is that a lot of hospitals and a lot of healthcare facilities in general utilize what some people call physician extenders or nurse practitioners and physician assistants. And some of these folks are obviously very talented. They're smart people, but they're also kind of pushed to their limit from time to time. I don't think many of them will admit this in some of their cases, but we kind of hear about it through other people. And when people are being honest, they'll tell you what's actually going on in hospitals, and sometimes it's sad and scary. But these people are meant to relieve physicians from the amount of burden they have for some of these patients. And in a way, it's really good, especially for the people who come in there with, you know, uh, an ear infection or something, or like
Exactly.
a minor problem, right? So, not that people are going to the ER for an ear infection, but people do if, like,
No, but
didn't go
and then it
away.
yes, and then it goes into a whole nother side conversation where it talks about, like, we could go into insurance and what does that mean? And then if there's
Mm,
different what's happening with economical situations and insurance
yeah,
rates, and a lot of people may not have it. So ERs then become primary care physicians, and then it's a whole nother
yeah,
can of worms. But the standard of care never changes. So that's very important that everybody understands.
right,
Like,
right, yeah,
does not change
yeah.
regardless. That's
No
important.
matter no matter what your insurance is, no matter
Or if
how
you don't
good
even
or
have
how
it.
bad,
Yeah,
if you don't have it, right, like, you deserve a standard of care that is a basic standard to all people.
absolutely.
And that's especially an emergency situation, right? Like, we want
Yes,
people to be able to go into an ER and get, like, the same type of care, like, the same basic level of care throughout the process. So, yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. So, all right, non-economics. This is maybe the kicker in this situation, obviously, because that's a lot of money. $49 million is a lot of money. And you can't stand in front of a jury as a plaintiff's lawyer and go, this lady is a single mother. Imagine if you were in her shoes,
right.
what that would be like. You can't stand there. I think some people think that we do that. Um, and you can't. It's called the golden rule argument, and no one's allowed to say that. But you can't talk about what she's gone through. Well, first of all, let's start with the past. pain and suffering, $2 million, and then future 49. There may have been some sort of extrapolation there of, since 21, how much pain and suffering has she been through? Like, what, maybe 500K a year is what they're looking at, let's say.
Yeah. And I thought that was pretty conservative, honestly, considering what she's been through from what I've read.
Right, right.
So,
So, but I don't know if the numbers add up, because if we were to go, all right, let's say
right. And then
it's five.
extrapolate that over her life
Yeah,
expectancy. Yeah.
she'd be like 140 years old or something by the time she got all that money, however it's done. But yeah, I don't know how they did
That's why
it.
a life
I don't
care
know if it.
planner is really important, folks, because you never know what
Yeah,
kind of life
yes,
expectancy you're gonna get.
right.
Although those
Yeah, I
mortality
get.
tables are pretty concrete, so
Or, maybe that they're looking at it, and they made the argument, well, this is only going to get worse, right?
it
Her
has to
injuries
have
are going to get.
happened. Yeah.
Right. They're going to get worse. She's going to need around the clock care. She's going to be, in a worse neurological state. I mean, I imagine that that's what happened, but I don't know. I mean, we don't know. We could always call up the attorney who argued the case. I'm sure that they'll tell us all of their secrets, tell us their secret sauce as to how they got this verdict. But that's good. I mean, it's a good amount of money, all this together. So, Laura, what do you think the chances are of them getting a check? First of all, is the plaintiff going to get $70.8 million in her pocket?
Unfortunately, no. That's not what that
No.
means. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, so
But it's also important,
from.
even though it's not like it's not verdict equals cash in hand. That's not how it works when it comes to verdicts such as these sizes. I mean, even on little verdicts, if there's an issue during the trial and obviously it goes into an appeal, that's a different kind of conversation. But when it's a verdict of this size, that is not one
Mhm.
and the same. And I think a lot of people may think, oh, she just got, $70.8 million. Like I hate to bring it up, I was going to the McDonald's coffee case, like everyone thinks, oh, that
Yeah.
they just got all those, but that also had a punitive damages aspect. So there's a lot of
Right.
different things that kind of go into these that I think just again, like I can guarantee a lot of people read the headline, but not the article. And then there's a lot of people that read the
Yeah.
headline, the article, but they haven't gotten to this part, this verdict form part, which it kind of like helps to explain exactly what we're looking at.
Right. And that's a really good point. That I always like to talk about McDonald's hot coffee, because the
That should be
verdict
our
was a
next
punitive
one.
damage.
That should be our next
It should
talk.
be. Yeah, it should be. That's
And I
always a
won't
fun
drink
one.
Dunkin' that day. I will drink McDonald's in honor of our conversation.
Please, please do. I will
We should
take a
do it at
McDonald's cup.
McDonald's.
Yeah, let's do it. They'll love it. They'll be like, yeah.
For or
Please do.
against
Please
McDonald's.
do your vlog there. I I'll argue for McDonald's. I think what I'll do that day
No,
is
I
I
want for
will get
McDonald's.
a. All right, fair enough.
Oh no,
You
you
win.
go for McDonald's. I'll go for the little old lady. I want
Yeah,
her.
see,
Yeah.
I'll let you represent the underdog. The On that day, what I'll do is I'll take my coffee and I'll dump it into a McDonald's cup, because I am a coffee snob, and
You are.
that's the way I roll. That's the way I roll. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a good point. She got that punitive damages verdict, and then McDonald's appeals, and then they settled for an amount much less than that.
Yeah.
And sometimes what we do in this business is, you're like, well, there's a risk, right? You have this verdict, which is great, but there's a risk that the Court of Appeals, which isn't really hearing the case over again, but they're hearing something that happened in the case that the defendant here feels was a mistake. They're like, oh, maybe there was evidence here that the jury should have never heard, right? And as a result, the Court of Appeals can say, yeah, the jury should have never heard that evidence from the life care planner, because they're a crock. So we have to redo the trial. And this happens. It happens to people like way more than we think.
Yeah.
And the
Very
higher
true.
the verdict, the higher the verdict, the harder the fight is. Because now you've kind of thrown down the gauntlet, and the plaintiff's got this verdict, and now they got to defend it. You have to defend that verdict, really for your life. So, that is a reality of the situation. And hopefully they can walk away with a settlement that will make the plaintiff happy in the meantime, but that doesn't always happen. And people like to see how far that they can push the the other side before they start going, hey, let's talk about settlement. Maybe the court does something that makes you feel like they're not going to rule in your favor, and you start going, maybe we should consider settling this thing. So, that's my take on it. I don't think that the hospital, or really the hospital's insurance company and excess and coverage, is going to write a check for even 30 million, even half. And I think that they're going to be forced to the table before they even think about it. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think what's also sometimes, so verdicts, there's a lot of different reasons why people go to trial, and there's a lot of different reasons why defense attorney, not the attorneys themselves, but their clients will want a case to go to trial. And sometimes, especially if we're thinking, I've never met Miss Stewart, so I don't know the plaintiff in this case at all, but I can imagine that even if that doesn't equal, I mean, those top numbers, so like the 1 through 4, and actually including the wage number 5 and 6. Anything that's not regarding the non-economics here for her pain and suffering, those are likely, I would imagine, not going to be disputed. It's really
Hmm.
like you said, like those non-economics. But what's sometimes important is that when verdicts serve a lot of different purposes. This one has brought awareness to, I think, some of the issues that maybe these hospitals were experiencing, especially in that time frame. And then also for
Hmm.
someone like Miss Stewart, and again, I've never met her, I think it can give her a sense of, it doesn't put money in her pocket, but I think it does give her a sense of community. It gives her a sense of um just kind of like some love and support to understand that her community understands her, and that although it won't
Hmm.
help compensate for her injuries, it won't help put money in her pocket. I think part of that does give a lot of healing to someone that's been in that position. So trials are
That's a really
tough,
good point.
and that's a difficult process, but I would hope there is some sort of plenary compensation for her that will help, because she definitely seems like not only she deserves it, but she actually needs it. And I
Yeah.
think when it comes down to verdicts like this, it should be at least some form of comfort for her and her family, because it's a nice feeling to know, like, okay, I'm not alone in this. People see me and they can
Yeah.
hear me, they can see what I'm going through. And that honestly, it's cheesy, but that's kind of priceless
That
in when it comes to
that's
these
a really good
situations.
point. That's a really good point. And I've had clients that were happy that they had their day in court, you know.
Exactly.
They weren't, maybe they weren't thrilled with the result, maybe we did the best we could, and they were like, yeah, we wish we would have got a better number or whatever. And though they were happy that we worked hard, and they were happy that a jury of their peers heard the case, and that they had their day, and
Yeah,
that they took the defendants and made them accountable. And that,
exactly.
I think that was good.
Yeah, it feels
So,
good to have people show up for you,
mhm,
and sometimes that's a lot of what this is.
100%. 100%. So, I was trying to find the witness list in this case to kind of make sure that there was a life care planner. That by now, anyone who's watching this is going to be like, dude, just stop talking about the life care planner. But anyhow,
Mike really wishes he were a life care planner, so I think he's just trying to live vicariously through whoever did this.
probably, probably, I'm 100%, 100%. So, well, anyway, this was good. This was good. We're gonna do more of these, and if anyone ever has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information will be in the description. Any closing thoughts from you, Laura?
By Mike's mom.
All right, Mom. Call me later. I love you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.